What's up, E58 youth? It's Brandon here. And if you didn't know it's Brandon, then I don't know where you've been. Anyways, I want to continue our series on identity today. If you haven't watched the video with Brandon and I, the other Brandon and I, having a conversation on identity, it's on our YouTube page. Go check it out. Some really good stuff. And we had this conversation on how so many of us find our identity in what other people say about us. And just the trouble of that, the struggle of that, but then ultimately kind of the downfall of that, because there's voices in our life that sometimes will change or completely turn a different direction for, and find our worth and our identity in that. And at some point, those people are going to be gone or out of our life. And who are you when those voices aren't around you anymore? And what are you left with? And so a couple weeks ago, to start off this whole series, we came out of the passage of the baptism of Jesus in Matthew 3. And it's an important moment because I truly believe that this is the moment that set the trajectory for the path that Jesus was on. Unlike everybody else, Jesus actually believed what the Father said about him, and he never forgot it. And I want to read this passage real quick. In Matthew 3, 16 and 17. And when Jesus was baptized, immediately he went up from the water, and behold, the heavens were opened to him, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and coming to rest on him. And behold, the voice of the Father from heaven said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." Amazing scene, right? The Holy Spirit descending like a dove, the voice of the Father saying, "Son, I love you. In you, I am so pleased." And it's important to note these words. Again, when we look at this, it feels so tiny, but it's such a big difference, right? Sometimes the smallest things can have the biggest impact. This is one of those things. He says, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." Because up until this point, Jesus really hasn't accomplished anything. He doesn't have the notoriety yet. He doesn't have the following yet. This dude is just starting off. And it's interesting that the Father would use this time, before all the notoriety, before all the fame, before all the written down miracles, before all of this stuff, the Father thought this was the opportune time to tell Jesus of his identity. Because so many of us, we find our identity in what we do. But the truth is, you aren't what you do. That there is an identity that lies even deeper than that. Now, on the bad end of this, it's not good to find your identity in what you do, because if that's the case, you're going to find your identity in your mistakes. And oftentimes, what does this mean? This means that so many times we hold our mistakes against us. And this almost becomes our identity. You know, one of my favorite Kanye West songs is called "Only One." And he has this line in there that is always one of those kind of things that I sing to myself. And it says this: "No, you're not perfect, but you're not your mistakes." And again, this is such a reminder because, man, so many of us, because our identity is in what we do, man, we carry this huge luggage suitcase of all our mistakes with us. And we hold it against us, and we get down on ourselves, and we get into this dark place. You are not your mistakes, and you are not what you do. But even on the opposite end, so many of us find our worth or our value in what we can produce. Somehow we have believed the lie that we aren't valuable unless we produce something, unless we're bringing something to the table, unless we accomplish something, right? Because we live in a culture that prioritizes success, right? And here, arguably the most successful man, not arguably, the most successful man to ever walk this planet, he gets the approval of God the Father in heaven before he has accomplished anything. Man, what if we could believe this? What if we could find our identity in that place of who God says that we are? Because at some point, that thing that you're doing, that thing that you can put your hands to, is not going to be there forever. Again, when I think of this, I oftentimes think of my basketball career. And I remember when my career was kind of going off the deep end, when I knew I'm probably going to be done with this. And it felt like such a challenging time with my identity because this is what I've known. I've been playing basketball at a high level for 20 plus years. And now all of a sudden this is going to be gone, taken away from me. And I remember thinking, who am I if I can't do this anymore? Most people in my life at that point in time knew me because of what I could do on the basketball court. And I don't think I knew me if I wasn't doing something on the basketball court. And so basketball career is done. I'm going through identity crisis. And I remember, man, the Lord took me back to this thing. And again, it was almost like he brought me back in time. Like, Brandon, before you even started on this basketball journey, before you even started doing all these other things, in the same way that I spoke over my son, I speak over you. That you are my loved son, Brandon, and you I am so proud, and you I am well pleased. And I want to challenge us today to hear that voice. Man, you are not what you do. Your identity is deeper than that. Your identity is this, the fact that God the Father, he says, in you I am well pleased. So this is my challenge to you. In what areas of your life are you finding your identity in what you do? Either good or bad, the mistakes that you're making. And I want you to really sit down and take a moment to think about that. And think about, man, what are the ways that I can find my identity in what God has already said about me? It's not like we work to find God's approval. So at some point when we've done a year good of good Christianity, God the Father says, all right, you've made it in. I'm proud of you. Thank God it does not work like that. And the other thing too that I want you to do is I want you to go to Matthew 3:17 and I want you to fill in the blank with your name. So for example, it's going to sound like this. And behold, a voice from heaven said, this is my beloved Brandon, in whom I am well pleased. And I want us to believe it. Just like Jesus. Love you guys so much. Look out for part 2.